So I want to just start with a story today, and the story goes that an elderly man's walking along a beach one day, and then in the distance he sees a young boy, and as he grows or gets near to him, he sees that he's picking up starfish and he's throwing them into the ocean. And he walks up to the young boy and he said, "What exactly are you doing?" And the young boy says, "Well, the sun's coming up and the tide's going out. If I don't save these starfish, then they're going to die." And the man looks up and down the beach and he said, "Son, there's miles and miles and miles of beach, and there's like literally hundreds of starfish in every mile of beach. What difference can you possibly hope to make?" And the young boy bends down and he lifts another starfish and he throws it gently into the ocean, and he says, "Sir, I made a difference for that one." So if you're here today and you're not already vegan, I understand the choice can seem like a daunting one. You maybe don't know what to eat or what to wear, and you feel like you need to be an expert on the environment and farming and animal husbandry, and you need to be an expert in health and nutrition. And you may feel alone because none of your friends and family are vegan, none of your workmates or your friends are vegan, and you may think that they might question your choices or make fun of your choices. But the only thing you need to understand to be vegan is that every time that you show kindness to another being, you've already made a difference. And every time that you choose compassion and justice over violence and oppression, you've already made a difference. And every time that you stop to realize that the most precious gift that any of us has is life itself, well, then you already understand what it is to be vegan. And you're not alone. You just need to take a look around you today. Look at this room and upstairs. There's hundreds, maybe thousands of vegans in Belfast alone. There's millions of us in the UK now. So you are not alone. And yes, our numbers may be small at the minute, but animal agriculture already fear us because they know our numbers are growing and growing fast. And they know there will come a day when we stand together and united and we say to them, "Enough." Because a wise man once told me, and he's actually here today, right is always right and wrong is always wrong. So my name's Clifford. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm just an ordinary guy from Ballymena. I'm not really a public speaker, and I've got braces in at the minute, so a Ballymena accent and braces probably not the best combination, so I hope you can understand me okay. And I'm not here to preach to anybody today or to judge anybody. Who am I to judge? Because it took me 45 years of my life to make the choice to go vegan, even though I was an animal lover from I was a little boy. So I'm not here to preach to anybody. I'm just here to tell you the simple truth. And there's an ancient Sanskrit word for this. Gandhi actually coined this. It's a derivative of two other words from satya, which means truth, and graha, which means force. Satyagraha. And it's the power of telling the simple truth. And we understand that better. We look to the words of St. Augustine, who said the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it, you just let it loose and it will defend itself. So today I just want to tell you the truth, and the truth is that one industry is destroying our planet more than any other, and that's animal agriculture. It's the leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, water pollution and habitat destruction, and it's responsible for 91% of rainforest destruction. 91%. There's an area the size of 6 football fields being cleared every single minute. And we looked at greenhouse gas emissions. All transportation stands at 13%. That's planes, trains, automobiles, lorries, buses, cars, boats, the whole lot is 13%. Livestock or animal agriculture, 51%. And the main reason of that is because livestock are the main producers of nitrous oxide, and that's a greenhouse gas that's 296 times more destructive than CO2. The number of humans killed in all wars in all of human history is 1 billion. Now last year in UK slaughterhouses, would anybody care to guess how many farmed animals were killed in UK slaughterhouses last year? Anybody hazard a guess?
1 billion?
You're not too far away. It's actually 1.2 billion. And if humans killed each other at the same rate as we kill animals, we'd be extinct in 17 days. And we look to the oceans, 90 million metric tons of fish are pulled from the ocean each year. And 70% of the world's fisheries are already exploited. And amazingly, over a third of the fish killed are used to feed animals, so pigs and cows. And 35% of the fish that we catch are thrown away and dumped. They're never eaten. And a thing I read this week is that sharks kill on average 12 people per year. 12 people per year. They're one of the prime predators in the ocean. And yet human beings last year killed 100 million sharks. And that's ongoing in every year. 11,000 sharks per hour we kill. And that's based on catch numbers only. And shark populations are now so bad they've dropped by almost 95%. And we've discovered another continent. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is almost 3 times larger than France. 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic floating around the ocean. We're using the oceans as our personal toilet, and they're becoming polluted, hypoxic dead zones. And there's this push in the media now about single-use plastics and ocean plastic. If we look at that, ocean plastic, fishing nets make up 46% of plastic in the ocean. Straws, which are a big thing in the media now, which they push. Would anybody care to guess the percentage of straws in ocean plastic?
60.
It's 0.03%. So the answer, if you're concerned about the ocean and concerned about the fish populations, is to stop eating fish, not to stop using straws. And at current rates of fishing, by 2045 there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. And by 2050, we'll have an empty ocean. There'll be no fish left. And just one more thing. The Earth is 4.6 million years old. And we scale that down to 46 years. Human beings have been on the planet for 4 hours. The Industrial Revolution started 1 minute ago, and in that time, we've destroyed 50% of the rainforest. It's amazing. We're destroying the planet. The Earth is not dying. She's being killed, and the weapons being used are ore, knives, and forks. And I heard it said once, we don't inherit the Earth from our ancestors, we only borrow it from our children. So the future literally depends on the choices that we make today. And we're living on this planet like we've got another one to go to, but unfortunately we don't. There is no planet B. And I highly recommend, if you want to see more about how the Earth is being destroyed by animal agriculture, that you check out this film. It's available free on Netflix. It's called Cowspiracy. It's well worth a watch. So I just want to tell you about myself now, just for the next 10 minutes, and my journey to veganism. 2 things that happened in my youth that kind of shaped the person that I am today. So the first one was in the summertime. Way back in the day, I was only a little boy. The farmer would come around in the summertime on a tractor and flatbed trailer, and all the kids from the local community would get on the trailer and he'd drive us to a field, and we'd literally pick the potatoes by hand and fill them into sacks. And at the end of the day, depending how many you'd picked, he'd pay you a few pounds. And I was only 6 years old, and I was too young to go, but my sister, who's older, said she'd look after me, and I was allowed to go along. And I don't remember a lot about the day. It's a long, long time ago. But I do remember it was hot and sunny and dusty, and we stopped for drinks at one point during the day. And while I was drinking from a bottle, out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 of the farmer's sons kicking a football around the field. And it transpired that what had happened was they'd caught a little bunny rabbit, and they'd put it inside one of the potato sacks, and they tied it closed, and they proceeded to kick it around the field and kicked it to death. And the squeals that came from that little rabbit, even today talking about it, I get upset. It really upsets me. The coin dropped with me at 6 years old that animals feel pain and suffer exactly the same way that we do. And it's amazing that some people think animals don't feel pain, and farm animals were taught that they don't feel pain and they don't react the same way as we do. Well, that's an easy one to debunk. So it's called a flame test. If you take your hand, or your partner's hand, or your girlfriend or your boyfriend's hand, and you push it into an open flame, what happens? They'll scream and they'll pull their hand away. And if you do that with your dog and you push his paw into a flame, the same thing will happen. He'll howl or scream and he'll pull his paw away. But that's the same for a sheep. It's the same for a pig. It's the same for a cow. We all react the same way. We all feel pain in exactly the same way. Now, flip forward now about 4 years, and we'd moved into the suburbs of Ballymena, and we lived as by road about 2 to 3 miles to the local, as they called it an abattoir in those days. I prefer saying the word slaughterhouse now because it is a house of slaughter. But it was actually about 500 yards across 2 fields from one field into the other. And this day, me and 2 friends were playing football at the front of our house. And out the corner of my eye again, I seen a cow running across a field, closely followed by 2 guys dressed top to toe in white with green boots on and splattered in blood. And they were chasing the cow with really hefty sticks. And I immediately stopped to see what was happening. And they caught the cow up and they proceeded to start beating the cow. And beating it viciously. And me and my friend were shocked by this, and then we almost automatically began to shout, like, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop!" And my dad came running out of the house, and he saw what they were doing, and he joined in with the shouting as well. And after a few minutes, it seemed like a few minutes, it was probably only a minute or a minute and a half, the cow actually fell off its feet onto the ground. But they continued to hit it across the back and legs and head really viciously. And then eventually some other guys turned up with a van, and they tied ropes around it and they dragged it off. And I didn't understand initially what had happened, and I said to my dad, how could anybody do that to an innocent being that hasn't, why would anybody do that to an animal? And he explained to me that the abattoir was close by, and the cow had obviously escaped from the abattoir, and they were trying to get it back in. And that was the day I realised, well, actually I'm angry when I think about that story, because I didn't even realise at that time that my food choices were the direct cause of that to happen. So even though I was an animal lover my entire life, I was paying other people to do something to an animal that I would never do myself. And when I was a little boy, like most of you, I surrounded myself with animals. So the books I read were about animals, and the cartoons and the movies I watched were about animals. My pajamas had animals on them. My bedclothes had animals on. My curtains. Heck, I even had a teddy bear up until I was 10 years old. I can still remember it. I took it to bed every night. So I loved animals, and yet, what happened to that young boy? How did I get to a place where I was paying other people to do something to an animal that I wouldn't do myself? And that's a question I want you to ask yourself today. At what age did you lose your compassion? At what age did you lose your compassion? Because as children, we all love animals, but at some point we get dissolved into society, and we just do what everybody else does, and we're doing things that really don't lie right with what our morals and values are. So when we're growing up, we pick things up from those around us. So some people will pick things up like racism, sexism, ageism, and one we've had in Northern Ireland for the longest time was sectarianism. These are learned behaviours that you pick up from your family and your friends and people at school. And luckily I didn't pick any of those up, but the one I did pick up was speciesism. Some of you might know the word, might be a new word to others. And speciesism is simply the assignment of different values or rights or considerations solely on the basis of species, or simply put, that some lives matter more than others. And speciesism is taught to us. It's probably the first ism that any of us learn. But how does it work, and how does it manifest in our lives? So if I asked you here today, how many people in this room would consider themselves an animal lover by show of hands? So that's everybody. And how many of you have companion animals? Again, almost everybody again. And yes, we're at a vegan festival, and I wouldn't expect anybody to say anything different, but even if I went out onto the street and into the general public and asked the same question, the answer would be the same. Almost everybody considers themselves to be an animal lover. And yet we're doing things everybody's doing things and paying for things to happen to animals that they would never do themselves. So if you think about it, if you were leaving here today and went outside and you seen a man with a baseball bat standing over a dog and he was going to hit it, what would you do? Most people would step in. You'd definitely shout at him to stop. A lot of people would step in and you wouldn't allow it to happen. But let's say that was a pig or a little lamb. Would anybody react any different? No. And anybody in the general public who's not vegan, would they react any different? They'd protect that little animal, because that's the default position for human beings. We protect the innocent and we protect animals. We don't want to hurt them. If we throw that round, say you're at a friend's barbecue and they're meat eaters and they're having a barbecue, and you brought a little lamb to the barbecue and you set it down and you reached them a knife and said, who here is going to kill this little lamb to put onto the barbecue? Would any of your friends or family do it, even though they're meat eaters? Would anybody hurt that little lamb? No. They'd all be shocked by that. And even if somebody stepped forward and said, yeah, I'll kill it, everybody else would stop that person. Some people would leave, some people would say, no, you're not doing it. Other people would stop and to prevent somebody hurting that little animal. So it's just a learned behaviour that you've picked up. It's not your natural behaviour, it's something you've been taught. So when you're young, you're taught that some lives matter and some don't. So when you're a little child, all animals are the same. You want to go and stroke them and cuddle them and see them. But at some point, you're taught to draw an arbitrary line. So you're taught to love cats and dogs and horses, and you get upset at fox hunting, and you get upset at bullfighting, and if somebody shoots a lion or a bear, you get upset. But these other animals, the ones that we consume and wear, well, don't think about what happens to them. It's normal, it's needed, and it's necessary. That's what we're told, and therefore you don't think about it at all. You don't even think about it. It happens somewhere where you can't see. It happens behind a wall or up a lane in a slaughterhouse. But the question is, if it happens in a slaughterhouse or it happens right here in front of you, that somebody puts a knife in the throat of a little animal, is there any moral difference at all? Just because you can't see it, is there any moral difference? I don't think there is. Like I say, compassion and love for animals is not taught. It's untaught by society. We've all been duped into believing things that are not actually true. And how did this happen? It almost happens without us knowing. Has anybody in here today seen a film called The Matrix? Yeah. Well, in The Matrix, the main character at one point is offered a blue pill and a red pill. If he takes the blue pill, his life continues as normal and nothing changes. If he takes the red pill, then he's forced into reality. He's forced into seeing the reality of the Matrix. Well, we don't live in the Matrix, we live in the Matrix. And the Matrix is the lies that we are taught by the meat, dairy and egg industries from when we're young. And what do these lies sound like? So if I asked you, or even people in the street, where do we get our calcium from? What do most people say?
Cow's milk.
It's cow's milk. And if I say, where do we get our protein from? Most people will say, meat. Okay, so you're taught that these things are normal, needed and necessary. And what do the lies look like? Well, we've all seen this stuff. Happy eggs and happy cows, laughing cows. None of this is true. This is all conditioning by the industries to make you feel comfortable about your choices. And this is the other side of it. Red Tractor approved, certified cage free, animal welfare page, certified humane. And this one here, RSPCA approved products, you're giving farm animals a better quality of life. This stuff here is only to makes no difference to the animal whatsoever that's going to lose its life. The only thing this is for human beings to feel better about their choices. That's all it's for. And I'm going to quote directly from the film here. When Neo asks Morpheus what the Matrix is, Morpheus replies, the Matrix is everywhere. It's the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. My next few slides, I'm going to show you some pictures of food. I want you to shout out if you see food or not food. There's just a few of them. So don't be scared to shout out. I'll show you the first one while I take a drink. What do you see here? Is it food or not food? Food. Vegan pizza, the best thing in the world. And the next one, food or not food? That's food. The next one is trickier. What do you see here? Food or not food?
Yeah.
Well, I see animal parts. But the funny thing is, to 90% of the people on the planet, they see food. That's food to most people. But once you go vegan, you kind of see it differently, and you see it what it really is. It's kind of, to me, that's disgusting now. Next one, food or not food? Not food. If anybody wanted to eat this little puppy, you'd think they were crazy. You'd be absolutely horrified. And yet, in certain parts of the world, China and Korea, for example, they eat dogs. Does anybody know why that is? Why do they eat dogs? What's different to them than us? One word.
Culture.
Culture is the right word. Well done, Thomas. Culture. It's the story they've been taught. It's their matrix. They don't see dogs as companion animals the way we do. They see them as food animals. So this picture here was actually taken at Yulin Dog Festival this year. And we're all horrified by that, and rightly so. But so are the general public who are paying for animals here to go through the same thing. And people are signing petitions, they're doing protests, and most people are enraged by this. But they don't make the connection that what's happening to those dogs is exactly the same as what we do to animals here. And I say to people, if we could somehow get 2 or 3 ships and take them to China and load up every single dog that dies at Yulin Dog Festival to be eaten and bring them back to the UK. And then once they arrive in the UK, we'll put them on trucks and we'll take them into UK slaughterhouses and we'll kill them under UK humane conditions. Would anybody be fine with that? Would anybody think that's okay? You see, there's no difference from, all it is culture. It's just the story they were taught. The next picture, food or not food? Do you see a living being here, or do you see Sunday dinner? Because to a lot of people this is Sunday dinner. But they're not seeing the animal when they go into the supermarket. They see the little pretty pink packets of food. They don't make the connection from the living being to what they're buying on the shelf. And again, what do you see here? Do you see bacon and sausages when you see that picture? Or do you see a beautiful little happy soul that just wants to live his life and be free? And the next one. What do you see here? Do you see steak and leather jackets and burgers?
Grass puppy.
A grass puppy. Calves are the most gentle little souls on this earth. I spend a lot of time around cows, and they're inquisitive and they're funny and they're nervous. This young fella here is not steaks and burgers. He's a living, breathing being who just wants to live his life in peace. And that's what we need to realize. The Matrix is a story we've been taught that some animals are different than others, when the truth is they're all pretty much the same. In every way that matters, they're the same. They all feel pain and suffer in exactly the same way. They all have families. They all feel happiness. They all feel joy and sadness. They all have eyes to see, ears to hear. They have all hearts that beat. And yet somehow we've been duped into believing that the only part of a farm animal's body that doesn't work in exactly the way it should is its brain. It's the matrix. And this food pyramid that we've all been taught, with man at the top, is nothing more than ego. We need to let it go. It's nothing more than entitlement. That's all it is. So we need to open our hearts up to the animals and think rationally. Think for ourselves and not just what we're being taught. So back to the matrix. That's our reality. That's the lies that we are taught. But what is the reality we have created for the animals? Now, some of the images I'm going to show now, there's nothing graphic. You might feel a little sad when you see them, when you see what we put these animals through and the conditions that they're kept in. So this is a farrowing crate. This is standard in a factory farm. Most pigs in the UK are brought up in factory farms. I think it's about 95%. So the female sows live a lot of their adult life in what's called a farrowing crate. That's this cage. It's just about 24 inches wide, and it's just marginally longer than her body. So she can stand up and lie down. That's it. She can't turn around. She can't walk forwards or backwards. And you can see the little piglets. This area here is called the creep area. So she'll be impregnated, and she'll be pregnant for about 4.5 months. And a lot of that time she'll spend either in the farrowing crate. They let them out, they're supposed to let them out for a short time every day, and they go into another cage and then they get put back into the farrowing crate. And when she gives birth, she'll be in here for a long extended period of times until these little sows have weaned from her. And she will go through maybe 8, 9 or 10 cycles of pregnancy in 4.5 years, maybe 5 tops, at which point she'll be considered spent, and then she'll be put onto a slaughterhouse truck and taken to her death. And the little pigs, when they're born, well, the first thing they do to them, they will cut their tails off, they will castrate them, and their teeth are clipped. And their teeth are clipped because Pigs don't like to live in confinement with each other. They don't like it. They go crazy and they'll attack and bite each other, and it's something they don't normally do. But they do it because they're kept in conditions like this. This picture here is Hogwood Farm. And a lot of you maybe heard the scandal in the last 2 years about Hogwood and the conditions that the animals are kept in. I've been in one of these places here. And when you go in, it's absolutely horrifying. The stench and the smell and the filth and the dirt in the air is overwhelming. And when you see these pigs crammed in the cages like this, it's just absolutely horrifying. It's shocking. And pigs in reality are not dirty animals. They like to be clean. We think pigs are dirty because this is the conditions that we force them to live in. They can't do anything else. And this picture here is James and Mark Wright's farm. These two guys are from Armagh, from this country, and they have pig farms in the south of Ireland. This one's in Somerset, and they have recently applied to draw the Newtownards pig factory. They have now applied to build one here as well. So this is the kind of conditions they keep their animals in. These are the young piglets. They'll live for 6 months like this in this confinement here. Absolutely disgusting. Again, this is one of the pens. You can see there's about 20 pigs crammed in here, and the only thing we give them, the government say it's for their enrichment, because pigs are intelligent, they like to be stimulated. It's called a hang chain. That's this thing here. It's just a chain, one to play with. That's all they get for 6 months, and they'll live like this. And just one more picture again. So this is factory farming for pigs. This is their reality. This is what we do to these beings. Is this the best thing that we can do for animals? You wouldn't treat your worst enemy like that. And they are completely innocent. I often wonder, do they wake up in this reality and think, there must be some mistake. I am innocent. I haven't done anything to anybody. And yet we take everything from them that they were put on this earth to enjoy. And their only possession is their life. And we manage to take that from them as well. So the first time any of those little pigs will see sunlight, or see grass, or see the hedgerows, or feel the wind in their face, or the sun on their face, is the day someone comes to the farm and loads them onto a truck and takes them to a slaughterhouse. And when they get to the slaughterhouse, they're terrified. I've been there at some vigils now, and when you see them arriving, they are terrified. Pigs are really, really intelligent, and they know something's wrong. And they don't want to go inside. But somebody gets on the truck and forces them inside. And once they're inside, they go immediately into a line to stand to wait to be gassed. Now, I've been at Carrow in Cookstown, and I've been in Cranswick in Ballymena. And the last vigil we did at Carrow in Cookstown, where they kill up to 3,000 pigs a day. It's crazy. 21,000 a week, 11,000 from the south of Ireland, 10,000 from the north. They're forced into line to stand to be gassed. Now, the method they use is called butina, where they're forced into gondolas, maybe 2 or 3 at a time, and they're dropped down into a gas chamber. And this is the last view that those pigs will have of this earth. So they live in those crabby conditions for 6 months, and the last view they have of earth is this. This is the inside of a gassing gondola. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen pig gassing. CO2 is a really cheap and aversive gas. It's really nasty stuff. So the first thing they feel is suffocation, and they thrash around and they fight it. Just like if somebody tried to put their hand over your nose, you would fight it. You would fight for your life. And the second thing they feel is burning, because CO2 clings to the mucus in their throat and their stomach and their mouth, and it burns them like an acid burn from the inside out. So if you've ever seen pig gassing, you can see it on YouTube. You just have to search it. It is one of the most horrific things I have ever seen. It is so upsetting, I can hardly talk about it. And we've stood at Carrow and listened to the screams from the kill zone, which is about 100 yards from the front gate. And the screams of those pigs is horrifying. I had to remove myself, and I stood and cried around the corner. I'm not afraid to say it. And when I was standing there, I was reminded of when I was a 6-year-old boy listening to that little rabbit screaming in that field. They scream in exactly the same way. They die in absolute torment and terror. I challenge anybody to stand there and listen to those animals scream and then say bacon or eat bacon. I think it's one of the most powerful things. You know, if we could somehow bottle that feeling when you hear a being in the minute of its death, if we could somehow bottle that and give it to people, it would be one of the most powerful tools that we ever had. It was Jeremy Bentham who said, "The question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer?" And I can tell you from personal experience that when we suffer, we all suffer as equals. Just want to move on to the dairy industry now. What's so bad about the dairy industry? Well, the dairy industry used to be a sideline in animal rights, and it's now front and centre. But why is that so when we read things? This is the images, this is the matrix, this is the story we're told. Happy, healthy cows. That's a blue pill. It's a lie. It's the deception by the industry. So recently we've seen this campaign, the Sandra Higgins campaign, Go Vegan World. And I'm sure we've all seen these around, and every time as vegans if we see one of these, it's like, yes, we're winning. And if we look at some of the data and research now, data and research for the National Dairy Council, this is not vegan propaganda, shows that 41% of Irish women and 30% of men are limiting or avoiding dairy. And this is the same thing, same survey, different magazine article. So there's a change coming. And at a recent conference in Glasgow, it was a Dairy Council conference. Experts discussed the public's ever-waning interest in dairy products in favour of vegan alternatives. They warned that if the current anti-dairy message persists, then the industry will cease to exist within 10 years. So the dairy industry is going cheerio, thank goodness. But what's so wrong with it? I've got a 2-minute video now, absolutely not graphic, and it kind of explains the dairy industry in 2 minutes better than I could. So that's the dairy industry. And I remember the day I found that out myself, because I had always assumed that cows give milk or produce milk for us. But cows do not give milk. They only produce milk when either they're pregnant or have given birth, and their milk is for the little baby cow. So mother cow will be artificially inseminated, and she will be pregnant for about 9 months. And at the end of 9 months, just like a human, she just wants to see her baby. Because cows are very maternal, exactly like human beings. So you imagine you're a human mother and you wait 9 months to see your new baby arrive, and once it's born, it's just torn away from you and taken away. It's equally distressing for mother cow. In fact, they will cry for weeks. And I used to live in the countryside and I used to hear them, and I remember saying to my mum, "Why are the cows crying like that at night?" And she told me it's because the baby cows have been taken away. And I thought it was just something that had to happen. I thought it was just, that's what happens. I didn't really question it. But often they will return to the spot where they last seen their baby for up to 2-3 weeks, maybe a month. And they will cry out in the direction that they last saw her, but she will never see that little baby boy again. She'll go through about 4 or maybe 5 cycles of that, being artificially inseminated, being pregnant for 9 months, having her little babies taken away from her. And at 5 to 6 years old, she will be considered spent and loaded onto a truck and taken to a slaughterhouse. See, the dairy industry is the meat industry. And the little boy calves, the female calves will all live the same life, a life of servitude, and then what I told you. And the little boy calves is somewhat different. Now, one of 3 or 4 things can happen to them. A lot of farmers in the UK will dispose of them at birth. And government figures tell us that last year in the UK, 2,500 young male dairy calves were shot in the head on the day they're born. Some farmers don't even shoot them in the head. They will set them on the ground and kill them with blunt force trauma. They will hit them over the head with a shovel or a hammer or a pickaxe, because young boy calves are considered a waste product. They're competition for their mother's milk that they want to sell to human beings. And the quality of meat that you get from young Friesians and from dairy cows is really, really poor. Now, some other farmers will keep them for a short time, and then they will be loaded onto a truck and taken to market. And you can see the age of these young cows arriving at a market. Now, these are called drop calves. And you can Google this yourself. Drop calves is the industry term for baby cows who are taken from their mothers to be sold for slaughter. To a dairy farmer, a baby cow is competition for his mother's milk. That's what comes up on Google when you search it. So you can go to a market. This is Ballymena Livestock Market. It's about 5 miles from my house. And you can see at the top here, well, they have the ordinary stock coming in here. And I seen this one day about 2 years ago, and I thought, what the heck's a drop calf? I've never heard that term before in my life. I didn't know what it was. Well, the drop calves are the young dairy calves that you've seen in that trailer coming in, and they go into market and they're sold for a few quid, really, really cheap. And once they go through the market, 2 things will happen. Some go immediately across the road to the slaughterhouse where they're turned into cheap meat products. They use them in pies and soups. They also use them for rennet, which is something they get from their stomach to make cheese products. Little baby boys. The third thing that can happen to them, and this is increasingly more so now in Ireland, it's another source of income for the farmers, is they're sold for veal. Now this is a terrible image. You can see the age of these little calves. So this is Logan Transport, who were transporting for Logan Calf Farms, which is about 2 or 3 miles from my house. And they breed thousands of young calves. And the boy calves get sold for veal. And they get loaded onto trucks when they're like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 days old. Some of them can hardly stand. And they go on a journey. Some of the journeys are 100 to 125 hours, often without water and food. And they go to places like Turkey and Italy and Spain. And when they arrive there, they're forced to stand in a veal pen with a chain around their neck for 16 to 18 weeks. And at 18 weeks, they'll be taken out of that pen and they'll die a horrible death at the hand of a knife-wielding stranger. They'll get a knife across their throat at 18 weeks old. And this picture was taken on the border between Holland and France. Like I say, this is Logan Transport from Ahackle, which is 2 miles outside Ballymena. And when people seen this, they were horrified, because people don't normally see the age of these little calves going to their death. And whether they died here at the side of the road or died at 18 weeks old is no difference. So the Logans came under attack online from all corners, not just vegans, from other people alike. And their defense was really weird. They felt like they're doing these little cows a favor, so they said, what would you rather we do? They actually said this online, what would you rather we do? Kill them at birth or give them a chance at life? So that was their 2 options, kill them at birth or give them a chance at life. A chance at life being taken ripped away from your mum, taken 125 hours on a lorry to stand in a veal pen, and at 18 weeks old someone runs a knife across your throat. That's not a chance at life. The actual answer is C. Stop breeding them into existence in the first place. We're breeding them into existence to create a substance that the human body has no need for whatsoever. And live export of young cows like this, that's not an industry. It's a vile and bloody atrocity. And anybody who supports this industry is either intolerably cruel or blindingly ignorant. Let them choose one or the other. There's no need for it nowadays. We have all these different options. You go into the supermarket now, it's so easy to go vegan. It's so easy when you go vegan, when you go into the shop and you go to buy a pint of milk for your coffee or your cereal, and you go to pick it up off the dairy counter and you think, oh wait, I watched that film a couple of weeks ago and I'm vegan now. And you turn around and you pick up one of these. And you've all seen it, there's so many, there's soya milk, rice milk, hemp milk, almond milk, hazelnut milk, so many options. They all taste great. And even if we didn't have those options, dairy milk is not, and cheese and chocolate, they're not oxygen. We can live without them. There's so many plant milks now. I promise you, if you're not vegan, try one. You will find one that you love. And also, for anybody who thinks drinking soya milk grows boobs on men, I've been drinking soya milk for a long time. Soya milk has phytoestrogen in it, which is completely different than the estrogen that you actually get from dairy milk. So you're not going to grow boobs if you consume soya milk. So we're going through all this process to create a substance that the human body has no need for whatsoever. And who is to blame? Well, this picture is called Guernica, painted by Picasso. And in the Second World War, Hitler sent an envoy to Paris to meet Picasso to enroll him into the Nazi cause. And the envoy was looking around Picasso's apartment and he'd seen this painting. And it depicts the bombing of the Basque village by the Nazis during the war. And the envoy was trying to impress Picasso, and he stood in front of it and he said, wow, this is amazing. Did you do this? And Picasso said, no, you did it. So we did it. Human beings, the consumer, if we buy the product, they will supply it. It's simple supply and demand. So all we need to do is to stop buying the products. Stop buying the products, and all that process of cruelty doesn't need to happen anymore. I think we need another Copernicus or Galileo to remind us that we are not the center of the universe. I'm just one being here amongst many others. There's nothing more important about me, that my suffering is more important than that of another being. So what can we do about it? How do we make change? Well, Margaret Mead, the great anthropologist, said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And Ida B. Wells, civil rights, said the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. We just need to tell the truth and get the truth out there. And there's many ways to do this. Activism doesn't necessarily mean going and shouting at people. It's informing people. So some people bake buns and some people write stories or good Facebook posts or Instagram posts. Any way you can get the message out to people, do it. None of us can do everything, but we can all do something. So I work with 3 groups now: Be Kind, Anonymous for the Voiceless, and the Save Movement. And we do all types of street activism, and we talk to people. And we have a table upstairs if anybody's interested. Come and talk to us if you fancy getting involved. So when you talk to people, many people, it's the first time they've ever considered veganism in their life. And it's almost an assault course. They'll have the same questions like everyone else has. So it's just a matter of learning the answers to their questions and the rebuttals, because I have yet to come across a good argument against veganism. And the method we use, does anybody know who this is? Anybody? You should know. This is Socrates. This is Socrates. And Socrates said, I cannot teach anybody anything, I can only make them think. So we use a thing called the Socratic method. Has anybody heard of that before? Yeah. Socratic method. So we don't preach at people. We don't tell them what to do. We don't point fingers. We simply ask questions. So when we show them footage and pictures, we say to people, have you seen this before? Do you think this is okay? Would you treat an animal like this? Because most people, you can't force anything on anybody. You can only lead them, and when you ask people questions, they lead themselves to an answer that they already know. And many people, when you're talking to them, will ask you questions. And how much time have I got? Yeah, I'm okay. I've got 4 here today. I just want to kill quickly because they're probably the most 4 popular questions that people ask us when we're out in the street. So first one people will say is humane slaughter. Well, Benjamin Franklin said, a half-truth is often the greatest lie. And this is a great lie. These two words do not go together. This is an oxymoron. It's probably the biggest oxymoron that we have in the English language. Humane means benevolence, to care for, to show compassion. And slaughter means to kill in a violent fashion. Those two words do not go together at all. And there's no humane way to kill somebody who doesn't want to lose their life. And another one we hear is personal choice. Personal choice, when I first heard it, I thought that's actually a good argument. It's my choice to eat meat. You can't tell me what to do. But personal choice forgets about the victim involved. You must always look at any injustice from the point of view from the victim. And the victim is the animal. And that person's not given a personal choice to the animal. They're only thinking about themselves. So that one's easy to rebut as well. It might be my personal choice to run over and punch Thomas in the face. But if I bring pain and suffering to somebody else, then it's no longer a personal choice. And this one can be a touchy one, but we live in Northern Ireland and we hear it all the time. People justify eating animals because of their chosen religion. Now, I just want to make it clear, I was brought up in the church. I did Bible study in church twice a day when I was young. I am not a religious person anymore, but I do know my Bible quite well because of that background. So, two things people will say to us is, number one is dominion. We have dominion over the animals. Well, dominion doesn't mean you may have a child and have dominion over it. But dominion means guardianship, to look after and to care for. It doesn't mean just to treat something whatever way you choose. That's not the meaning of dominion. And another one we hear all the time is animals don't have souls. Has anybody heard that? People saying animals do not have souls. Well, the Bible's actually really clear on this. I'll just touch on it quickly because somebody asked me it this week and I thought I would cover it. The word for soul, the biblical Hebrew word for soul in the Bible is nephesh, and it means life breath or living soul. And in Genesis 1:20, 1:21, 1:24 and 1:30, where God is creating the animals in the Bible, He creates them with a living soul. Okay? We go to Genesis 2:7, where God is creating man. It's the same word. It's exactly the same word for animals and humans, nephesh. It literally means, nephesh means life breath. But when we translate that into the King James or into any of the new Bibles, we use the word soul. So the Bible's very clear that both animals and humans both have souls. And we can go to Solomon in Ecclesiastes 3:19 to be really clear about it. And it says, "For what happens to man also happens to the animals. Just as someone dies, so does the other. In fact, they all have the same nephesh, living soul. So that man has no superiority over the animals." That's really clear. There's no argument there. You can't argue with that. The Bible is succinct and clear that animals do have souls. Now, like I said to you, I'm not religious. And I can't tell you if I have a soul or not. I genuinely do not know the answer to that question. And I would never say I do or I don't. I just don't know. But I do know one thing. I know that if He has a soul, I have a soul. And I know that if I have a soul, He also has a soul. When I look into the eyes of these beings, I see a reflection of myself. And the last one, this is actual footage of me. When somebody says, the first word you'll all hear when you say you've gone vegan, what's the first word you'll hear out of somebody? Protein. Protein. Well, you could probably talk about it for about 3 hours. I'll just quickly touch on it. So, who in here knows somebody who's had type 2 or adult onset diabetes? Yeah? Who knows somebody who's had a stroke, heart disease, heart attacks? Lots of hands up. Does anybody know anybody ever that's had kwashiorkor? Kwashiorkor, anybody at all? No? No? Well, kwashiorkor is the medical term for protein deficiency. So the hospitals are not full. There's no kwashiorkor ward in the hospital. There's no kwashiorkor doctor in the hospital. No vegan has ever died of kwashiorkor or protein deficiency. And really simply put, if you eat enough food, you will eat enough protein. In fact, a high protein diet is detrimental to your health. So I recommend you look up on that. If you eat enough food, you'll get enough protein. It's simple. I've got 10 minutes left. I'll just wrap up now. I want to first speak to the non-vegans. And I'll say to you, I believe that people are inherently good. And I am not angry at you if you're not vegan. I don't think you're a monster, because I wasn't a monster when I wasn't vegan. I just didn't know any better. I'd been programmed into the matrix to think these things were okay. We need to realize the earth was created for all life, not just human lives. But we as human beings have decided that we are more valuable than other beings, when the reality is we are all valuable and we all value our lives. And even if you don't love animals, and the only person that values their life is themselves, well then, for me, that is reason enough to leave them alone. So the next time you go to the supermarket, these are the 4 words that drive our food choices: habit, tradition, convenience, and taste. I recommend you think about a new word, and it's a word I think about all the time. It was written in the Upanishads about 3,000 years ago, and the word is ahimsa, and it literally means non-violence and compassion for all living things. Animals, they're not chicken nuggets. They're not jackets and shoes. They're not steaks and burgers. They're not bacon and sausages. They're not wool or Sunday dinner. They are here to live and enjoy their lives exactly like you and me. And the good news is that every second that passes is a chance to change everything. You don't need to wait for New Year's to rock around to make a resolution. You can vow to change to go vegan today. And we all already know in our hearts what the right thing to do is. And if you're already vegan, well, Victor Hugo said, there is nothing more powerful than a truth whose time has come. And a vegan world is coming, because this one is cruel and unjust. There's a Hopi prophecy which says, when the earth is ravaged and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people shall come unto the earth from many colours, classes, creeds, and who by their actions and deeds will make the earth green again. Well, we could actually make this prophecy come true. And the beginning is near. In 2016, the last survey that was done, there was 600,000 vegans in the UK. And we had one earlier this year which showed we have 3.5 million. Now, some people think that's a little high. I don't agree, because every vegan that I know, and you're probably all the same, most of the vegans that you know have all gone vegan in the last 2 years. So you could talk to one other person, and if that person goes vegan, that's such a result. If you look at it this way, if there's 3 million vegans in the UK at the minute, and you talk to one other person this year, and that person goes vegan because of what you tell them and show them, well then we have 6 million. And if that 6 million people talk to one other person, and they go vegan because of what they're shown or told, then we have 12. And you might talk to one other person. One person could be the next James Aspey, the next Ursula Ned, and they could change the lives of thousands and thousands of people. And change is not going to come from the top. It won't come from business. It won't come from the farmers. It won't come from government. It will come from grassroots. And veganism is now the biggest social justice movement of our time. We are the guardians of this earth and the voice of the animals, and they deserve to live their lives in peace on this planet with us. And I'm drawn to the words of Gandhi, who said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So we're all responsible, each and every one of us. And maybe as individuals we cannot change the world, but we can affect the people around us. And if they in turn affect the people around them, well then we will change the world. I just have one more short video to show you, because I think we dwell sometimes in the sadness and the sad side. But this is a happier video, and it's so we look at how the world should be. Hopefully it'll work. I love that. I've watched that about 100 times. It makes me smile every time I see it. I just want to leave you with one final thought here today. When you go home today, I want you to think about one person. And the person is Rosa Parks, who on December the 1st, 1955, changed the course of history. I want you to let her be both your inspiration and your guide, and take your metaphorical seat on this bus. We here today, we are the spark that will light a great fire, and I promise you, I know it in my heart, one day the sun will rise on a vegan world. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. If anybody has any questions, I'll be upstairs because I have to get off. The next person's probably planning to get on. So.
Well done, that was brilliant.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
My mummy, I'm in tears. She's not vegan, and she turned around after that talk and she said, I will never buy anything that's not vegan.
Oh my God, that's so
after
cool.
years.
That's so cool. Thank you so much. Yeah.
She literally just went,
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to get it. Thank you so much. Thank you. That is unreal. Thank you so much.
She's been working on me with
Thank you.
like, there's 6 kids in the house and we're all vegan and we've been on and on with her, and every time we go into the house there's milk. We're like,
That's amazing. That's so cool. Thank you so much.
I was like, oh my God.
We'll be upstairs if you want to come home.